You're now listening to an archive episode of Or So I Thought, back when the podcast went by a different name. I really hope you enjoy it, and please make sure to listen to our new stuff. So, after you're done here, just scroll up, pick a new episode, and press play. What does it take to make it in tech? Mark Zuckerberg was a great programmer, but a lousy businessman. Jeff Bezos was great at business, but not a programmer at all. And Sean Parker was a hacker with ambitions that went way past his programming or his business skills. We know these names. We know their stories. Some have even made it onto the movies. But what are the intangibles that can make or break a career in the tech world? This episode is the story of one specific serial entrepreneur in tech, a name you might not know yet, but I think his story will uncover some major tipping points that many of today's tech stars have in common.
I've started 5 businesses so far. I'm on my 5th company. It's called Drift, D-R-I-F-T, and they've all been in the same space, kind of in the SaaS and marketing automation kind of world.
That's David Cancel. We'll get to know all his bona fides, but first, I asked him, what made you interested in technology?
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into technology, right? I was kind of when I was in high school and beginning college, that was kind of pre-internet, if you can believe that. So like pre-commercial internet at least. And so, I started geeking out on computers and mainly because I think I was an introvert. I am an introvert, I should say. And so I was into like building and making things. And before that, it was kind of like building physical things, and a computer let me do the same thing.
And if you're wondering about his educational pedigree, here's where we start to see a little bit of a parallel between him and the big household names that we're used to hearing.
So I mostly self-taught myself. So I went to college in Queens as well, Queens College. And so I studied a little bit of computer science, a little bit of accounting. I ultimately dropped out of college, but then kind of taught myself most of what I know today. And that was, I learned some of it early online, although when I was doing it, there wasn't much stuff that you could find. And so I would buy books and magazines. Most of them don't exist anymore, but they used to be really geeky. Over time, I just kept learning more and more and more and going deeper and kind of just taught myself. And I think most people can do that if they are naturally curious. They can just go off and teach themselves how to do something.
We already start to see this self-sufficiency and curiosity that you kind of need in the field. But before we proceed, I wanted to get his take on why he dropped out of college.
And for me, the reason that I dropped out of college is kind of like many reasons. One, really, if I take full responsibility for it, which I do, I was bored. And I felt like what they were teaching me in college, I didn't care about. And I was bored to tears. And I'm a person that really learns through experience, through doing. That's really why I dropped out. There were other reasons, like, I was kind of supporting my parents at the time, my mom, and, a lot of family reasons. But I won't use that as an excuse. It was really that I was bored.
I'm sure many of you are already saying, hey, this guy's just like me. But boredom alone doesn't fuel you enough to keep going in the beginning. There are always small events that play a bigger role in your story.
But I created this website, and I remember one day, I can still remember this email. I got an email out of nowhere, because back then you used to actually put your email address at the bottom, right? You weren't afraid of spam, because there was no one there. So I get this email from this guy in Russia, and he said, your site is real cool, man. And that was it, right? And it was this guy in Russia, and I can't remember his name. And I was like, wow, I made something. It was like this light bulb moment, and someone actually not only saw it, but I had a connection with them, right? They sent me an email and they said, this thing is cool, right? It sounds so simple and ridiculous now, but this hadn't happened, right, in my lifetime, like this ability, like someone across the world used something that I made and then responded to it. And from that moment, I was hooked.
He learned how to develop software, and got a few small jobs at early software companies. This brings us to about 1995, and now he's ready for a transition.
And so I was like, how do I get out of this kind of traditional software that I was building at the time and start building websites and web apps and all the stuff that we know today? How do I get in that world? And so I found these three people working in Soho back in New York City on this startup idea. And I met them through a news group, which most people won't know what that is now, but it's just imagine a big forum and this news group. And so I met them and I went to work with them, and I was part of this founding team of this thing called Bolt.com, which today would be the equivalent of a Facebook. And so it was a social network. We had millions of users. We built it from nothing. We had to build everything from the actual software on the, there were no examples. So we had to build all the software that ran the site. I had to go build the servers. I had to go co-locate them in New Jersey in our data center. I had to do basically everything. There was no easy way to do this. And so it was amazing. It was like the wild, wild west. And so I went out, built this, and became addicted to this. And company grew really fast. We were probably 100 and some odd, 150 people from what I can remember when I left. And we had filed to go public. And this was, 98, 99.
I love that he described it as the Wild Wild West. That's what it felt like for them at this time. And I think this is important because at this point, you're picking up skills that most aren't picking up. You're learning things on your own before the textbooks. You have first mover advantage. Many others wait for a trail to be blazed. But the truth is, once there's already a trail, you're behind. There's less opportunity. So if you're in tech or any other space, I would ask myself, where is the unexplored jungle that I can launch myself towards? Speaking of exciting places, even tech stars aren't immune to the most risky adventure of all.
I left to go to Boston. I followed a girl who I met in New York. You know the story. So I followed a girl. And, no one had told me back then about this, like, if you go, you may never come back. And so here I am. We've been married for a long time now. We have 2 kids. And I came to Boston. I had literally never been to Boston. I had never even seen Boston. But I moved.
Risky move, but it paid off. And that's the thing. In career, in business, in tech, risk is necessary.
I started a company called Compete back in November of 2000. And for those that are too young to remember, November 2000 was a terrible, terrible and dumb time to start a company. So the reason it was so bad was that in March of 2000 is when the dot-com crash happened in the stock market. Right. And so here I was, the market had already crashed in March of 2000. And then that fall, November of 2000, I'm off trying to start an internet company. So not great timing, right? So we start this company and, so incredibly lucky because we managed to, unlike everyone that was around us and everyone that we knew at the time, we managed to raise money, and a significant amount of money, $6 million at the time, to start the company, and from a single investor.
Keep this investor in mind. He'll be the cornerstone for a point we'll come back to in a little bit.
So we start the company, and then we mostly had customers in the travel and entertainment world, let's say. Big brands, big airlines, big travel companies, big brands, Sony, all that kind of stuff. That was great. So that was going well for the beginning of the first year.
So they avoided disaster. Yeah, they founded the company at the wrong time, but they made the best of it. They got some clients, they were doing good. And then disaster struck. This time, it was a big worldwide event. 9/11 happened. And this was especially bad for them.
For us as a company, what it meant was we lost all of our customers that we had gained in that first year because they were travel companies. If you can remember this far back, like no one was traveling, it was done. People stopped buying and people stopped, really pulled back. And so all of those early customers we lost. And so then there were people who were saying we would go sell our product, which was internet kind of marketing and research product. And they'd say, no one's ever going to buy anything online. What are you guys talking about? I mean, literally, we got kicked out of places all the time. They said, yeah, people are going to buy books because Amazon only sold books at the time, books online, but no one's ever going to put their credit card online. No one's ever going to buy anything online. You guys are crazy. I lost my 401k, because I put it in internet stocks. Get out of here. I don't want to talk about the internet. Literally got kicked out of many, 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 many companies.
It felt like the wrong time to be stuck in the wild, wild west. And because of these hardships, this period marked a breakthrough for David in his career, in his life.
Because of this timing, and in some ways, the timing of 9/11, obviously we couldn't control. The timing of the starting of the company and kind of our focus, we could have controlled. We knew that the market had pulled back from this sector, but yet we were doubling down. And then those two things combined led to the first really 3, almost 4 years of the business being brutal. I mean, the hardest time of my life, really.
This is the part that many entrepreneurs don't share when they're talking about their story. And this is what separates an entrepreneur from a freelancer, from someone just merely working in a company.
We had to have 2 rounds of layoffs in those first 3 years. Right. And that was even worse. That was way worse because here were these people that we had recruited into the company. And we, as the founders, really had talked into coming to join us. And then we had to survive as a company, we had to let them go. But not only let them go, but let them go in a market where we knew most of them were not probably going to get a job for at least a year. Right. Because no one was hiring then. Right. There wasn't like letting someone go today and they have a job in 1 hour. Right. It was just like, these people, and some of them had families and probably would not get a job for a year. Right. That was the climate. And so that was brutal. And really that, not letting that happen a third time or a fourth time is what really kept us going.
This was the fuel that kept them going. Not the most desirable of fuels, but fuel nonetheless. And they persevered. They kept marching.
And then in 2004, really, then the company hockey stick, the market changed, people were buying again.
So this particular project still had a happy ending, despite the dark days.
And so it was just a really tough time. Ultimately, it ended up being great. Ultimately, because we picked the right partner, and that investor that I mentioned, he stood by us, throughout that whole time and really kept us going. And then we exited the company in 2007, which was great for everyone, including our investor.
David Cancel has gone on to start about 4 or 5 other companies, all of which have been successfully sold or acquired. But what can we learn from his trajectory? What can we bring back with us for our own careers?
I talk to a lot of early entrepreneurs or people who want to start companies, who are excited. Hey, I have an idea. Should I start a company? Should I do this? And my answer is always the same. It's like, is this the thing? You got to look deep within. Is this the thing you are willing to do for the next 5 years, 7 years? Is that how much you believe in this thing? Because if not, and I'm talking about I'm not talking about a solo business. I'm talking about actually the type of businesses that I usually start, right? Really starting a company, maybe bootstrapping it, maybe taking investment, but like you're making this commitment. And the reason I say this is because this is so hard, right? This is not the way to go get rich quick, right? This is not the way to live out your fantasies of being your own boss, right? Like this is actually hard psychologically. Even in the best of times, there's so much self-doubt, so much fear, especially as you start to hire people and bring them in, and there's so much that you're wrestling with. I wouldn't trade it for the world. This is what I love to do. But if you don't have that burning desire, if you don't have that grit, if you don't have that chip on your shoulder, that thing that you're trying to prove, what I see happen is that most people give up. They quit, right? And that's the thing that it's painful to talk about. Nobody talks about this. They talk about they didn't have product market fit. Oh, they ran out of money. Oh, all of the things we all hear each day. The truth is, having met thousands of entrepreneurs at this point, most of them that fail, as we would think fail, or the business doesn't go anywhere, gave up. And I respect them for giving up, because this is hard. Hard on you, hard on your family, hard on your life. And it's not rational. It's not for rational people. So when people ask me like, should I start a company or should I do this job or should I do? It's like, whoa, those are not the same thing. If you think these are like this is the same as like getting a new job, man, don't do this because this is not for rational people. This is for the crazy.
But we're all a little crazy, aren't we? I know I am. I do love the fact that he told us about the tough questions. Those are the ones that we need to ask ourselves. The major one being, is this what you see yourself doing 5 to 7 years from now until it takes off? Because it will take off if you play the long game, if you respect timing, if you take some risks. But there's also something else that we need to keep in mind no matter what our venture is, no matter what our business, even if it's in tech. This is where we bring it back to the investors that David has worked with, because he does consider these investors as unofficial mentors, and mentorship is important to him. It's important to every part of his success.
Because a lot of people ask me about how do I get mentors? How does it work for mentors? Because I'm always talking about mentors having a big impact on my life. And I'd say a few things. I'd say it's not structured. And if you try to make it a structured thing, it will most likely not work. Or you probably have the wrong mentors. Because the mentors that you are trying to go after and trying to spend time around are going to be people who are, by definition, so busy in what they're doing that they don't have time to meet with you, right? This is not a job for them. They can't meet with you every month at a certain time. And so you have to find people that you have that kind of fit, that are like 10, 20, 30, whatever number of years ahead of you, where you want to be. And so in order to do that, first you need to know where you want to get to. And then you need to find that subset of those people that you have some personal commonality around. Do you like paddleboarding and they like paddleboarding? Are you into tennis and they like tennis? Whatever the thing, I'm just using sports, but it could be anything, right? And so because that is going to give you an excuse to be able to spend time with that person, where it doesn't feel like a job for them, right? Hey, you're going paddleboarding with them, or you're playing tennis, or you're playing golf, or something, some recreational thing. And then in those moments, you're going to learn little by little things from that person, right? And that's the best way I've found to have mentors and to be able to get learnings, get their time, basically. And people are usually looking at mentors the wrong way, in my opinion, with saying like, how do I find mentors? How do they meet with me every month? How do I sit down with them? And it's like, dude, these people are not looking for another job? Like, what do you mean? Sit down? They're going to sit down and review your stuff every month? And if you find someone that's going to do that, they're probably not at the level that you need, because anyone at that level is not going to be able to do that. And so I have very low expectations for mentors. I look at the long game and I say, I'm willing to invest year after year after year just to get these little nuggets. Because the truth is that everyone's looking for this grand playbook. All of these steps that I got to take. What do I do now? What do I do here? You already know the answer to all this stuff. If you look inside, you know the answer to this stuff. It's all intuition. And what you're looking for is one little nugget here and there from these mentors or from the books that you're reading that are going to help you at the right time, at the right place, to do the thing that ultimately you already knew.
And at this point, I brought up the fact that this podcast itself, this project, was a way for me to get closer to people that I admire, people who are successful, people who might have something to teach me. And he commended me for that.
Oh, exactly. You're doing it. You're super smart in doing this and doing the podcast because you're giving and you're getting. And people don't get that part, right? Especially when we talk about mentors and role models and stuff. They want to get, but they got to give, right? And you're giving. So you're giving your time, your podcast, your platform, right, to help myself, help other people get our messages out there. And in return, you're getting. And that's the way that it works, right? Whatever you want to get, you got to give. Right, and that's another thing that I learned. You got to give. And I look back at, mentors, advisors, kind of formal advisors that I've had from my different companies. And like I said, I have no requirements on their time. And I've had advisors for my companies, various companies over the years, who they're mentors and advisors. I've made more money for them personally than they've ever made from me, right? I made them money. I never required them to make me money. They helped me make money, kind of indirectly. But, like that was how, I've been able to give what I wanted to get from those people. But people want to get without giving.
Give first. I think this is a great place to end it. But I do want to bring back some of the other lessons that we've learned. First of all, don't be afraid of the Wild West. Go out there, blaze that trail. Second of all, be very concerned with the timing. Play the long game, ask yourself the tough questions, and know that it will take time. Don't rush it, even when the timing seems a little off. And third, mentorship. Look for mentors in the right way. You have a blueprint. Rewind it and listen again to what he said. But always, always, always give first. And then you might just end up a tech star.
I would love if you have a website for your business, no matter how big or small. I'd love for you to go to drift.com, and it's 100% free. Go install Drift and try to communicate with your customers using it. And then for me personally, you can always find me on Twitter. My Twitter name is dcancel, DCANCEL, and just hit me up. I'd love to hear from you.
Wits About You is supported by FreshBooks. Here's the thing. I can spend hours and hours producing podcasts, but when it comes to invoicing, I can't bear to do it for more than a minute. With FreshBooks, it only takes me 30 seconds to create a professional-looking invoice, so I can get back to doing what I love to do, podcasting. FreshBooks even gives your clients tons of ways to pay online by card, so no waiting for the proverbial check in the mail. Go to freshbooks.com/wits to get a free 30-day trial. That's freshbooks.com/WITS and write Wits About You in the How Did You Hear About Us section. This has been Wits About You. You can learn more at witsaboutyou.com. I'm Alex Cespedes. Thanks for listening.